Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, November 15th, 2021. I am Dave Biddle. I am joined by Patrick Murphy. A lot to get into. Just another manic Monday. Goodness gracious, there's a lot to talk about. I love it, though. I love that we're here in crunch time. Michigan State and Michigan left in the regular season schedule. Winning, you're in. I love it. I absolutely love it. Let's start, Pat, with look back at Ohio State's 59-31 win over Purdue. I mean, the offense, we'll start with the offense, then we'll get to the defense. This offense was absolutely surgical. I mean, and Purdue's defense isn't that good, but hasn't been horrible. And Ohio State was able to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, scored touchdowns on the first 6 drives, scored points on the first 8 drives, had a field goal on their 7th drive, and then scored another touchdown on their 8th drive, and then really called the dogs off. They were inside the 10 in the final seconds, took a knee, could have scored another touchdown there if they wanted to. What a performance from this Ohio State offense.
Absolutely. And I think the only one that leaves disappointed is probably Mayan Williams, because he, I think, was looking for that touchdown on that last drive when they took that knee. But I think this is the offense that we saw kind of middle of the season, and then you played Penn State, and I think Penn State really brought it in that game. And then I think 2 weeks ago, I guess at this point now against Nebraska, you saw what taking a cog out of this offense with Garrett Wilson not playing does. It makes it easier for any defense to defend when you don't have one of the best wide receivers in college football. And Garrett Wilson came back and showed what he can do on any given Saturday. So I think that, when this offense is at full strength, when it's clicking like it was on Saturday, I've said this all year, I am going to be very shocked if there's a defense that can really slow this offense down. And even these last 2 games when they maybe haven't scored the points that they wanted to, it's still been a lot of yards. They've moved the ball well. It was just finishing in the red zone. And they did that with pretty much ease on Saturday. It was good to see the run game get going once again. And Garrett Wilson, though, is the guy that I singled out. Obviously, the numbers, 126 yards on 10 catches and 3 touchdowns, plus the 51-yard rushing touchdown. But just how, I don't know, maybe I started to underappreciate him just because he's been here and he's been doing it now for 2+ years. But, he just really stood out to me. I'm sure he was motivated. It sounded like it after the game. But, yeah, this offense is elite. There's no question about it. Steve and I were talking after the game. I guess the announcer on TV, one of them said that if there's a team that he thinks can go toe-to-toe with Georgia, it's Ohio State because of this offense. I agree. I mean, Georgia's defense is elite, and I know we'll get into some playoff talk here in a minute. But, I just think that this offense is too good for anybody to shut it down entirely when they're clicking, when they've got everybody going.
Let's look at the defense. Defense is still a concern. Now, I do see some good things with this defense. And I think, some of us, myself included, might have overreacted a little bit saying, oh, this defense gave up too many points and too many yards to Purdue. But Purdue, I thought coming into the game, they'd be able to move the ball. I mean, they gave up too many yards. They gave almost 500 yards. They gave up 31 points. But Ohio State jumped out to a 42-14 lead, went to more of a prevent defense than I think they would have if it was a closer game. I mean, Matt Barnes has been pretty aggressive. I like the way the defense has been playing overall the last few weeks. One thing I do see, Patrick, I see this defense is susceptible to passes over the middle. I see way too many open guys, specifically over the middle. What are you seeing overall from this Buckeye defense?
That is exactly what I was going to say, is over the middle concerns me. I think you saw Denzel Burke, Sevyn Banks, even though he gave up the touchdown, Cameron Brown, Sevyn Banks and Cameron Brown are doing a good enough job. Denzel Burke, while David Bell had a good day statistically, it took him 11 catches to get, 11 catches to get to 103 yards. So you did your job on him for the most part, given how explosive he's been and having a freshman play on him, most of it. But yeah, it's over the middle. It's the linebackers, it's the safeties. Bryson Shaw said after the game that he can't give up that touchdown over the top. He's the deep safety. He said it won't happen again. The problem is we've seen it too many times with Bryson Shaw this year. It's not good enough. It's good to hear him own that mistake, And that's something I want to ask Ryan Day about is kind of what they do in that situation, how they correct that. But, to me, I think when you've seen this team give up big yards, it's been to pass heavy teams. Penn State came in and threw the ball 52 times, Purdue, the exact same thing. So yes, they gave up 390 passing yards to Purdue. Yes, they gave up 361 passing yards to Penn State, but it was teams that realized we're going to throw the ball and we're just going to keep throwing it and kind of gave up on the run. I don't know how many teams they're going to see the remainder of the season that are going to be willing to do that. And I don't just mean these next 2 games. I mean, in the Big Ten championship, assuming Ohio State gets there, I don't think you're going to see a quarterback that can do what Sean Clifford or Aiden O'Connell did. And even in the college football playoff, I mean, maybe Alabama. But that's, if you run into Oregon again, and again, we'll get into that. Georgia's not throwing the ball 52 times. You'll obviously have other issues with some teams, but the pass defense is definitely a concern. At this point, I think it kind of is what it is. And certainly they can continue to improve, but we've got a large enough sample size at this point to know what this defense is. And you touched on the problems over the middle. So, I think that you kind of have to continue to work on your weaknesses, but you are what you are at this point in the year. And I think this defense has done enough with how good this offense is to win these games. I think that they will continue to do that. Teams are going to continue to target them over the middle, no doubt about it. I just don't think that there are teams the remaining on the schedule that are likely to do anything that enough to beat this Buckeye team, especially if the offense keeps rolling.
We'll get back to this year's team in a second. I do want to look ahead to the future and in regard to who's going to be Ohio State's defensive coordinator long term. By long term, let's just start with 2022. We'll figure it out from there. Jeff Hafley didn't think he'd be one and done at Ohio State. There's an interesting thread on the board right now with people debating what should happen, could happen, might happen. I talked about this on the show either last week or the week before. I find it a very interesting topic. Matt Barnes, I think overall is doing a good job, especially being just, thrust into this defensive coordinator role, even though he doesn't have the title. After 2 games, I think he's doing a good job. I really do. And I know Ryan Day likes him, and Matt Barnes is a young guy. He's 35 years old, a coach on the rise. Who knows what's going to happen? I understand the fans that are saying, listen, that's fine. That's all well and good. Ryan Day needs to bring in a proven defensive coordinator from the outside this offseason. And that's what needs to happen. I get that. If that's your point of view, that's an argument that I understand. And I might even endorse that. Here's what I think is going to happen, Patrick. I'm curious to get your take on it. And I put this in the thread. It's a 3-page thread in the front row message board about Matt Barnes and what might happen in the future with the defensive coordinator position. If I had to bet, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, here's what I think is going to happen. As long as the defense finishes the season strong, Matt Barnes will be the co-defensive coordinator, but will be the shot caller. Paul Rhodes will be the co-defensive coordinator, kind of in that Greg Madison role where somebody else is actually the shot caller, like Jeff Hafley was actually calling the defense. Kerry Combs last year was calling the defense when Greg Madison was here. I think it would be Matt Barnes calling the defense, Paul Rhodes having the title of co-defensive coordinator. What do you think is going to happen? What should happen?
Well, in that scenario, does Kerry Combs move on? Is that?
I think he will. I thought I was when we met with him that one day. It was a few weeks ago when he just gave that impassioned. You got to love Kerry Combs. He said a couple times about this year. He really stressed this year. I'm going to give everything for this. I don't know. Maybe I read too much into it. It definitely felt to me. My vibe was he was telling us this is going to be my last year here. I'm willing to take this lesser role right now and swallow my pride right now. And he mentioned over and over again how this doesn't affect his confidence in his coaching ability. To me, that sent a loud message that this is going to be his last year. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he stays on as DB coach. This guy is a very good DB coach and a phenomenal recruiter, and will hurt recruiting if he leaves. But that's just the vibe that I get is he's planning on this being his last year.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the one thing with Kerry Combs is I think his love for Ohio State is real. Right. And so, I could see him. I can see both points of view. I think you make a really good point. The way he did talk did sound that way. I like your scenario. I really do. I think, I mean, we don't know how much Paul Rhodes has had an impact, but we know what he's done in the past. I think that there is certainly, that certainly makes a lot of sense. I do think that at a place like Ohio State, and I said this before with coaching hires, you should be able to go out and pick the best in the country. Now, with that said, I don't think that the best in the country is always the name, right? I mean, sometimes it turns out that a guy like Matt Barnes or a guy like Ryan Day, let's remember, he wasn't a huge name when he was brought in as quarterbacks coach, that they tend, sometimes these coaches tend to know a little bit more than the fans and even us. So I think that Ryan really does have to look at this and figure out, okay, how good of a job did Matt do? And how much can Matt continue to develop? And how much do we believe in him? And I think they believe in him a lot. And then, like you said, do you want to go get a guy that can, whether it's Paul Rhodes or somebody else, that can enhance that and an experienced guy to work with him and kind of bring him along? Or do you kind of just hand the reins to Matt Barnes? Do you believe in him that much? I think Ryan Day believes in him enough that he will, like you said, he'll be the guy calling the shots. And whether it's Paul Rhodes, whether Kerry Combs decides to stay in kind of the similar role that he's had most of this year, I think that with what we've seen from Ryan Day, he's comfortable with, some of these guys he believes in that may not be the big names. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if they bring in someone, definitely if Kerry Combs decides to depart, whether that be Paul Rhodes on a full-time basis or not. But I do think that, like you said, the defense has to finish strong. And that doesn't mean you win a national championship necessarily. You just have to see things continue to move in the right direction. I think they have, even with what we just talked about. But I do think Matt Barnes ends up being the guy that is kind of running things going forward. And I think that that's a good call because I do think he's made a lot of good changes. And I think it would be very positive with an off season. You add some more guys in. And I think an off season to really work on these things that they've implemented this year would bode well for Ohio State.
As promised, let's get back to this season. I always love looking ahead. What am I doing? It's the middle of the season, not even the middle of the season. It's crunch time, and I'm looking ahead to the future. But it's an interesting topic, and our customers think so as well. Proven by the robust thread on the board right now. If you're listening to the show, after you listen to the show, get on that thread. It's a very interesting read, and if you're a subscriber, you can add your thoughts. All right, let's do some prognostication, my friend. As it stands right now, not who would be in right now, not what we think is going to be. What the committee says tomorrow night when the new rankings come out. Let's predict who's going to be in the college football playoff. Give me your 4 teams. Who do you think ultimately is going to make the college football playoff this year, Patrick?
I think that it will be, because there's 2 different things here. There's what I think it will be, and then what I could see the committee doing, right? But what I think is, I think Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship game. And so Georgia's obviously in. I think Georgia's probably in even if they lose to Alabama, as long as it's not a blowout.
Right.
So I see Georgia definitely in. I see Oregon, Ohio State. And that's where, I really have a question. Is it a Cincinnati? Obviously, Oklahoma losing takes them out of the equation. I assume Luke Fickell in Cincinnati keeps winning. I'm going to put Cincinnati in. This is more what I think will happen in terms of results and how I would then rank those teams. The committee may put a 2-loss Alabama team in over Cincinnati. I don't know, but that's the way I kind of see the games playing out and how I would have it shape up. Obviously, if Alabama beats Georgia, I don't think Cincinnati will get in. I just don't think that the committee values the group of 5 teams enough, even an undefeated one with 2 Power 5 wins. I think a lot would still have to happen. So those are the teams. What do you think?
Okay, so my 4 teams are, and I hope you're right about Georgia beating Alabama, because I do not think 2-loss Alabama would make it. And it's weird. I was thinking about this. So I think Ole Miss beating Texas A&M actually helps that situation out, because if you don't want 2-loss Alabama to make it, because now Alabama's lost to Texas A&M doesn't look as good, because now Texas A&M has lost again. I mean, not that Ole Miss is a bad team or anything like that, but I was glad Texas A&M lost. But I'm afraid Bama's going to beat Georgia. So I think, and in that scenario, they're both going to get in, of course. So I have Georgia, Bama, Ohio State winning out and making it. And then I have Cincinnati making it as the 4th team. And here's why. I think Oregon's going to lose to Utah, if not when they play at Utah in the regular season this coming week. they could play in a rematch then. Even if Utah loses that game, they could play in a rematch in the Pac-12 championship game. And I think Oregon's going to lose one of those games, or if they play somebody else in the Pac-12 championship game. I just think Oregon's going to lose. Cincinnati's going to win out. And I think the committee is going to put Cincinnati in there as that number 14, but Cincinnati needs help. Cincinnati can't just win out and get in. They need help for sure. So I have Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Cincinnati. All right. Now,
real quick. Here's an interesting, things would have to happen, but Oklahoma State, the way that they're playing right now, I think if they win the Pac-12 championship, which would mean beating Oklahoma potentially twice, if, Ohio State then would have beaten Michigan and Michigan State. So that takes those two teams out. Each of those two teams would have 2 losses. Oklahoma lost. So you still have Notre Dame in there. I don't think Notre Dame can do enough to move up, but if enough happens, Oklahoma State's a team that I think could be interesting. Assuming they continue to play well and whatnot, that they could sneak in, and that could be your conversation. Given both of our scenarios for that 4 spot with Cincinnati, do you take a 1-loss conference champion from the Big 12 who's playing well, or do you take an undefeated group of 5? So just another team to throw in there.
Yeah, Cincinnati would have to hope that Notre Dame wins out, because they could just sit there and say, we beat Notre Dame. And, sure. They didn't beat them on a last-second field goal. They beat them by 2 scores in South Bend. So, and I know that's their only quality win. Also, Cincinnati has to hope that the committee puts sneaks Houston in there as like 25th or something like that. So when Cincinnati plays Houston in their conference championship game, that Houston's a ranked team. And I tell you what, Cincinnati might have trouble with SMU. Cincinnati's not been winning impressively at all. They haven't covered in 4 straight weeks, including this last week. They beat South Florida by 17. Okay. They were favored by 23. Cincinnati, listen, I don't think they're a top 4 team. Don't get me wrong. I just think if they win out because of all the chaos, I think they're going to get in, man. But I don't know. I hope Georgia just beats Bama. I do not think 2-loss Bama is going to get in. I hope Georgia just takes care of business in the SEC championship game.
Cincinnati playoff team would be fun for the state of Ohio. I think that would be, 2 Ohio teams in the college football playoff would be interesting.
And I like Luke Fickell. I'd be happy for Luke. I don't think there's any I don't think any, and I'm sure every Ohio State fan that's listening to the show would agree. I mean, there's really not a fear of Cincinnati. Yeah, they're joining the Big 12, but it's like, are they even still going to be considered a Power 5, conference at that point? I'd be happy for Luke Fickell. I don't sit there. I have no hate for Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati has a lot of hate for Ohio State, but whatever. That's on them. All right, let's look ahead, man. I told you this is a manic Monday. Glad it's not Sunday, because this is our fun day. All right, enough quoting the Cincinnati Bengals. Ohio State, Michigan State this Saturday at the Horseshoe, high noon. Man, when the spread opened at 18, I did the story for our site. I'm thinking that's pretty robust. 18? Guess what I checked? It's up to 19.5. So it wasn't high enough. The money is going Ohio State's way. Obviously, this isn't, Vegas trying to predict the score. They're trying to get money on both sides so the sports books win. So 19.5 points, the Buckeyes are favored. Goodness gracious. I tend to think this is going to be a tighter game than that. I like this Michigan State team. I think Ohio State can contain this fantastic running back they have, Kenneth Walker III. But Peyton Thorne's a good quarterback, man. He's a good passer, but he's a sneaky good runner too. He's like a better version of Sean Clifford at Penn State, in my opinion. So, man, but Michigan State's defense is not anywhere near Penn State standards. This spread seems a little high. Your thoughts on this matchup? Your thoughts on this spread?
I agree with you on the spread seeming high. Somebody told me yesterday before I saw your story or saw the actual spread, somebody told me it was at 27, which blew my mind. So when I saw 18, that made at least a little bit more sense. Yeah, I mean, I think, this is a from an outsider's view, if you haven't watched Michigan State, I think you probably think, oh, it's, another Michigan State team that, just kind of sputtering along as they have in recent years, but this isn't. This is a good football team, and I'm going to dive into them a little bit more today in terms of watching back some of their games. But from what I have seen throughout the year, I've been really impressed with what they've done. You mentioned Kenneth Walker, you mentioned Peyton Thorne, 2 guys that should stand out. If you're not familiar with them as Buckeye fans, you will be. I imagine by the end of this weekend. A solid defense too. I think Mel Tucker's done a really good job with this team. I'm glad this game is in Columbus. I really am, because I think going to East Lansing, that's just it's a weird place to play. So I think the Buckeyes will handle business. I don't know if they cover that 18-point spread, but I definitely think, we talked about it. We think Ohio State will be in the playoffs, so we think they win this game, but I think it'll be a good one. And, senior day and all that, the emotion that goes with that obviously can play a part, especially early in the game. Michigan State, if they can get out to a fast start, could have an advantage in that. But I think this Buckeye team's focused. I think they know what the task at hand is. They've been looking forward to these games. Obviously this last half of the season, they've talked about it a lot. The Penn State game, even this past week, I think was a big deal for that team. But these two Michigan games, I think, are teams from the state of Michigan, I should say, are the games that they've kind of had circled at the end of the year here. And we're at it. We're at it, man.
Last but certainly not least, Buckeyes got a huge commitment on Saturday. Sonny Styles becoming the third commitment in Ohio State's 2023 class. 5-star safety from right here in Columbus, Pick Central. Big time. Number 1 safety in the country in the 2023 class. Number 8 overall player in the country. Buckeye legacy, son of former linebacker Lorenzo Styles. And listen, this was now, I think everybody had a pretty good feeling about Sonny Styles, but his brother didn't go to Ohio State, though. Lorenzo Styles Jr. is at Notre Dame, but what a great get. Sonny Styles becoming a Buckeye, and I did not expect this happening on Saturday. Kind of came out of the blue. I know you were driving to the game and had to pull over at Panera so you could get some work done and get the story up and everything and help with some of the social media stuff and everything else you do. But what a great get getting Sonny Styles, third member of this 2023 class for Ohio State.
For sure. And maybe, things for Ohio State aren't where, you close the door or close the fences on Ohio like they used to be. But when you have a player this good, especially in your backyard, it reminds me of a Zach Harrison type a few years ago. You can't let them go. Zach Harrison obviously was looking at Michigan. Sonny Styles looking at Notre Dame, especially considering Ohio State and Notre Dame are playing the next 2 years. You want this kid on your side of the ball for sure. I'm excited. I've seen him do some stuff over the summer when he was at Ohio State camps, interviewed him once there, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to see him on Friday. His Pickerington Central are playing my Upper Arlington Golden Bears in the state tournament. So I'm excited to see him in real action there. But everything I've seen, read, the highlights and whatnot, this is a great get for Ohio State. I think he probably projects it at one of the linebacker bullet spots. Maybe not that safety position that he's listed at on our site, but, I think he's a guy who can do a lot of good things on defense. You couldn't have, like I said, you couldn't have let him walk out the door of this state and head over to Notre Dame and have to deal with him the next 2 years.
Yeah, we didn't need both of the Styles kids at Notre Dame. We had to get Sonny here. Man, Lorenzo Styles Sr., Lorenzo Styles was he played at Ohio State when I went there, and in fact, my freshman year was his last year there. I remember sitting in the dorms being upset because he left early for the pros. That's one thing I remember because I loved watching him. He was a really, really, really good thumper of a middle linebacker. Great to get Sonny Styles in here. His son, the number 1 safety in the country. Okay, we're done with this robust version of the Bucknuts Morning 5. Great stuff from Patrick Murphy. Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you to our listeners out there for tuning in the show. We appreciate that very much. Hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.